Hello and welcome to the Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. I'm Sean Hammond. He's Michael Dwojak. We're back in action. Head to shawlocal.com for all of our Bears coverage and do us a favor and please consider subscribing. That's the best way to support us. Thanks for joining us. We are recording live on Friday, August 9th. We've got more Bears preseason action on Saturday, a game against the Buffalo Bills. If you're joining us for the first time, come join the conversation in the comments. We'll get to your Bears questions soon. Do us a favor, hit the thumbs up on YouTube, like us, follow us on Spotify and Apple. That's a great way to support the show. But we're excited to talk about some real football. We got some Hall of Fame action to catch up on last week. We've got, of course, the Bears and Bills game coming up on Saturday, which will feature Caleb Williams. He will play. Matt Eberflus announced yesterday on Thursday. Michael, it's Caleb Williams time.
It is time, and it's finally, I think it's finally time for fans to finally get a chance to see Caleb Williams. Obviously, we've had the luxury of, seeing him in training camp. I know some fans have gotten a chance to attend training camp as well, but I feel like most fans have been limited to videos that they've seen on social media. So I'm sure a lot of Bears fans are excited to finally see, what is he going to be able to do, and honestly, just to see him in a Bears uniform.
Obviously, it's preseason game, and we don't, Matt Eberflus didn't say how much he's going to play. We don't know if it's just going to be one series, if it's going to be two series, if it's going to be a quarter. We do know that the Bills starters are going to play about a quarter of action. So you would think maybe that means the Bears are going to do the same. I know these teams like to kind of be on the same page with that stuff, but there's no guarantee on that. And so certainly, this is going to be our first look at Caleb Williams in a Bears uniform. It's going to be our first opportunity to see him play in live action with defenders trying to, barreling down on him. And it's going to be more than just the little clips you see on social media from training camp. The Bears send out some clips every day, and they're always cropped real short, so you can't really see what's going on. This will be our first real look at Caleb Williams. Michael, what are you looking for? What's going to be on your mind as you're watching Caleb for the first time here?
I think it's kind of going to be what we've been talking about this whole training camp, right? It's progress. It's kind of seeing that he can go through his progressions, that he can, run an NFL huddle, like he can get the call in, he can relay it to his, teammates. Obviously, I know, fans want to see 20-yard passes, like long touchdowns, like sick throws and that kind of stuff. And obviously that can happen as well. But, in his first NFL start, in the preseason, I think that just seems to be what we kind of want to focus on. And I know that's kind of lame. I know people might be like, you've been harping on this for the past couple weeks now. But I do think that that's kind of going to show whether you're seeing the progression you want to see from Caleb, this rookie season. So, I think he'll make some nice passes. I'm curious to see how much they really open the playbook in the first, preseason game, whether it's just basic stuff like handoff and, a couple slants here or there or something like that. But, I think it's just pretty much watching him not make mistakes and show that he's ready to be an NFL quarterback, or at least getting closer to being an NFL quarterback. So, we can say all the different things, you want to see, but I feel like the basics is pretty much what you want to see, especially in his first, preseason game.
Yeah, we're not going to see much from Shane Waldron's offense. Nobody's expecting that in the preseason. It's going to be pretty vanilla. They're not really building off of anything. It's more just like getting those basic concepts down. I would bet $100 that the first play is going to be Caleb Williams handing off to the running back. Just get him out there, get him calling the play, and get him, get the ball in somebody else's hands. And sure, we will hopefully see him throw the football a little bit more. That's obviously what everybody wants to see. That's going to kind of depend on, hopefully they're getting a couple of first downs, and that first drive is a little bit, is not a quick one. I'm sure they have like a certain number of plays or rough range that they're aiming for Caleb. They just haven't told us that. So, it could be one long possession. It could be two short possessions. We don't really know. But yeah, just seeing the operation, seeing how he looks out there in terms of just running the offense and being that guy in charge. The offensive line is a little bit banged up, but not to the point where you should be worried about anything. I mean, there's a couple of guys. Obviously, Nate Davis has been out for the better part of 2 weeks now. Darnell Wright was in and out at right tackle this week. Sometimes he was playing, sometimes he wasn't. I don't really know what his status is going to be, but that left side with Braxton Jones and Tevin Jenkins looks rock solid. And then you got Ryan Bates and Coleman Shelton manning the center spot. We'll kind of see what that looks like. I've kind of been trying not to overreact to the injuries because I think that it's been minor stuff. But this will also be our first look at this offense as a whole, and that includes the offensive line, that includes the receivers. I don't know, if all the receivers are going to be playing. Certainly, I think we'll also get our first look at Rome Odunze, Michael. That could be really exciting too.
Yeah, and I think I know Maddie Eberflus mentioned that the starters are going to get a chance, but I'm curious to see, what does that mean for Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, right? Like, does that mean that they go in for a series? Does that mean they play at all and that kind of stuff? Obviously they got to get familiar with Shane Waldron's system, and they all got to get cohesive. But I mean, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen have plenty of experience. I don't know how much they need to play in a preseason game. So with that, I do think that can mean Saturday could be a really good opportunity for Rome Odunze, where he'll be targeted a lot. He could get a lot of good opportunities. I'm honestly curious to see, whether, if Caleb leaves and he's done after a couple series, whether Rome Odunze stays after and works with Bajan a little bit. I feel like they need to get their rapport going, and I think Rome just needs to get some experience. Obviously, you could always go through the whole, how much do you play? Do you risk injury? All that kind of stuff. But, for these rookies, and especially for Rome, I do think it'd be useful to get some, experience out there, even if that is with Tyson Bagent, a little bit, later in the first quarter.
Yeah, I want to see Rome, with whoever's playing quarterback. I want to see him out there a little bit.
Right.
I would hope to maybe see him even a little bit longer than Caleb. I don't know if that's going to be the case. We got some folks. Let's see. Rick says for injury updates. Rick's asking for injury updates, I should say. Yeah, the list is a little bit lengthy, and like every year, they're really cautious in the preseason. If anybody's got anything going on, they just sit them out. I think, I mentioned the offensive line. Nate Davis has been out. Darnell Wright's been in and out. Ryan Bates had a little something towards the end of practice on Thursday. I don't know if it's anything that's going to keep him out. We'll have to kind of wait and see on that one. So hopefully you have at least, especially if Darnell can play, hopefully you have four of those 5 starters. I think they'll have at least 3 probably. The other place to kind of watch the injuries that's really going to, Matt Eberflus says the starters are going to play. Well, the starters who are available. And yeah, there's a lot of dudes on that defense who have not been practicing. Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker, Tyreek Stevenson, all have been out. So that secondary is going to look really different. Also, Terrell Smith appeared to suffer an injury this week, the top backup at the cornerback spot. So you're probably going to see guys like Jalen Jones and some of those, Greg Stroman, some of those other guys who are a little bit further down the depth chart will probably be playing with the ones. That's just my guess on that. Montez Sweat's also been out. So we're probably not going to see him. He hasn't practiced at all this week. Andrew Billings has been kind of working his way back in, but I don't know if he's going to be quite ready to go. So that defense is only going to have about half the starters. Take it all with a grain of salt. It's the preseason. Mr. Shorty says, what's going on with Nate Davis? Yeah, so Matt Eberflus said yesterday that because Nate was ramping up. They returned to practice. They practiced Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week. On Tuesday, he was in there, doing warm-ups and didn't do the team stuff. And then, he apparently re-aggravated something because, he was fully out on Thursday. So I don't expect to see him. We'll kind of see. I think it's some sort of leg thing, but we obviously don't have an injury report, so we don't know exactly what's going on. But it is an injury, and I would just caution don't overreact to this stuff. Hopefully, I know with Nate Davis, people are going to overreact because of everything we've seen over the last year. Let's just see how it plays out. This is a guy that they're paying a lot of money, so I would be shocked if it got. I know Matt Eberflus has been pretty pointed with his messages when asked about Nate, but at the same time, they're paying this guy a lot of money. I don't think he's going anywhere, Michael.
No, but he has been pretty vocal about things. I don't think you're at a level where you're going to get released or anything like that. I wouldn't say I'd be shocked by it, but I do think that I would be like pretty surprised if they did decide to release him or anything like that at the end of training camp, when you have your cuts and stuff. But, Matt Eberflus has been pretty blunt at this point, at the point of, if you're playing, like, you could lose a starting spot because someone else is, playing well behind you and you happen to be injured. Like, he said that.
He said that exact thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so that's pretty much like, listen, like, you got to get out there. You got to figure out how to get your body to be in shape. And I know Nate Davis is week to week now, try to ramp him up. And obviously it didn't work out. But listen, like at some point, you just got to be available. Like that's how you like get time in the NFL. You need to be available and obviously to play the game. So, does it get to a point where, you release him? I know a lot of fans are, pretty, tired of this story and we're barely a year into it. So, I understand why Bears fans are pretty upset about it, but at the same time, it seems like, the coaching staff has been pretty blunt and been pretty much like, you need to be out there. If you're not out there, we have capable guys who are going to be able to step up and, take your spot. And we'll see if that motivates him. Obviously, if it's an injury that just happens and obviously that's out of your control, you're not going to blame a guy for that. But if it is getting your body ready and if it is, taking that extra step to make sure that you're ready for training camp, that you're ready for a full NFL season, maybe that, lights things up for Nate Davis and maybe he becomes, realizes, oh, I got paid here, but this isn't guaranteed to me. So really interested to see how that goes. Obviously, we still got 4 weeks of this in training camp. And obviously the storyline might change pretty quickly, but it's been pretty clear to me that, we're not just going to assume that he's a starter and it's very much a competition at this point.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Bears fans who have been following along closely over the last year are probably tired of this story. And so I get where the frustration comes in, where you say, just cut him, be done with it. It does appear to be an injury. We'll see what happens. This is why they brought in Ryan Bates and Coleman Shelton, two guys who can play all the interior spots. With Nate out the last couple of weeks, they've shifted Bates to right guard and had Shelton at that center spot. Assuming Bates is okay, like I said, he might have banged something up on Thursday, but it didn't seem major. Assuming he's good to go, I think that's what we'll see on Saturday. If he's healthy, I think we'll see Coleman Shelton at center and Ryan Bates at that right guard spot. And yeah, look, you got guys who can play the position. You got guys behind Nate Davis who can step in there and take his spot. And like you said, Matt Eberflus said, his exact words were like, some people say you can't lose your spot to injury. I don't believe in that. And so, yeah, that was clearly a message. CJ, which is an interesting point here. He says, I'm surprised Nate Davis hasn't gotten the Jalen Johnson treatment in training camp running with the twos. Yeah, if you remember when Matt Eberflus first came to Chicago, Jalen skipped some of the spring stuff, and then he showed up at training camp and Flus said, okay, you're going to run with the twos. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a thing that does happen whenever Nate Davis does get back. He's clearly sending in messages. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Like I said, I think Bears fans are tired of this story. So I'm gonna move along here. Rick asks about Kyler Gordon. What's going on with that? Every year he is injured. Yeah, and it sounds like this is one that happened while he was working out prior to training camp. We don't actually know what this injury is. But yeah, Kyler basically hasn't practiced all of training camp, which is unfortunate. That's your nickel. That's a guy who's more or less, even though he's not technically in the starting lineup, he's a starter. And that sucks. Hopefully we can see him at some point. I think Greg Stroman will probably be in that nickel spot. That's my guess. We'll have to just kind of monitor the Kyler situation. Flus was like kind of positive that that's trending in the right direction, but I don't know. He also doesn't really say anything. Another question is, are we going to see Torrey Taylor, the punter, who unfortunately did not play in that Hall of Fame game? I sure hope so. I would love to see him get out there and punt the football and see what he can do. They had a session during practice the other day where they were punting out of their own end zone. So, Torrey could basically basically booted as far as he wanted to, and he was no problem, 55 yards, over the head of the return man. It's really impressive to watch, and obviously he has the leg, but I think the more impressive thing is when he's in that short area and he can, pin the other team deep. That's what's really, really impressive to watch, and I hope we get to see him. Michael, are you excited to see the punter? I hope we do.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting because, how often are we talking about, the punter and, getting a chance to see him and that kind of stuff. But, I don't know how well it will translate, on TV. And obviously maybe it will, maybe it won't. Maybe you just see guys not receiving it well when they're receiving it. But it will be really fun for fans to kind of see, these punts are different. Obviously he puts a spin on it. They kind of do some different things up in the air. I know. There are some theories out there that he didn't punt last week because obviously they play the Texans again and they want to get an advantage for that week 2 matchup. I don't know how true that was and how much of a difference that really makes, but it is different. And I think it'll be really interesting just to see, of all the storylines that we have here, Caleb Williams, offensive line, the defensive injuries, the guys on the defensive line and that kind of stuff. Obviously, I feel like Taylor's like a fun one to kind of watch, where it kind of feels a little bit stress-free, where you kind of like it's the punter. He should take care of his job. And I feel like it's one of those storylines where you're like, all right, he made the punt. Obviously, he got it within the 10 or something like that. That's cool. I think that's probably one of the tamer storylines Bears fans will be looking for on Saturday when they take the Bills. I feel like that one, is important. And obviously, it's important to have a good punter. But when it ranks to all the other, storylines we're looking at this upcoming Saturday, that's kind of on the lower tier of things.
Mr. Shorty asks on the topic of Tory Taylor, any truth to Tory being exempt from the 53-man roster? I have to look up the language on that so the Bears did, they put in the paperwork or whatever, marked him as an international player. So he's not counting against the 90-man roster right now in training camp. So yeah, that basically gives them a free extra spot. I don't know if that applies to the 53-man roster at the end of the month. I got to look that up. I will look that up and get back to you though. Cause yeah, that's obviously it's always great when you can have an extra spot. My guess would be no. I think the regular season, I think the 53 is the 53. I know they might have some exemptions for international guys on the practice squad. I think that's what they did with that lineman from Africa last year. But I doubt it for the 53. But certainly something I'll look into. Michael, what another storyline this week and another curiosity, I suppose, heading into this preseason game is Halas Jones at running back. They moved him there this week. It's not a permanent decision yet, but they're going to kind of see how that goes. I talked to Chad Morton, the running backs coach, this week, and he said he was asking for this basically since he got here. He wanted to see Halas Jones at the running back spot. The thing that I found interesting from Chad was that, sometimes running backs, obviously they're physical dudes and you have to play physical to play that spot. But he said not every running back actually wants to lower their shoulder and hit a defender, but Halas Jones does. And that's what really impresses him. Like, he has no hesitation out there. There's almost no concern for self-preservation, if you will. And that might translate well. I think when we do get to the twos, I think we are going to see Halas Jones get a couple of touches from that running back spot.
Yeah, when I saw that, Eberflus talk about that, I was like, man, they're really trying to make this work, aren't they? They're like trying to cover all their bases before finally making a decision on him. Obviously, he's one of the guys that we're kind of debating, over the offseason. Is he going to get cut? Is he, going to make this roster and that kind of stuff? And listen, they're trying to make it work. They're trying to, see what he can do at all these different positions, whether it's receiver, kick returner, punt returner, and now at running back. And, I think a lot of people said, once this came out, they kind of compared it to Cordero Patterson, obviously, his ability to, make plays with the ball once he gets the ball, maybe not a great route runner, but, you get the ball to him in open space and he can create some stuff. So it'll be really interesting to see. And, it's interesting to see, how committed this coaching staff is to Halas, right? And, is that coming from, Ryan Poles? Is that kind of like, we like him doing his due diligence and trying to see, what are we going to get out of this kid? Like, we really invested
Mhm.
a lot in like one of his first draft picks. And then obviously I know that's a tough, if you do have to cut him, that's a tough decision to make, and something that, maybe fans might be like, well, that was obviously a miss. But, you know, it'll be interesting to see, he obviously doesn't scream, a Khalil Herbert style, running back or
It's
anything
a
like that.
crowded position.
Right. Yeah. So obviously there's going to be a lot to figure out there, but it'll be really interesting to see how they use them, what they do with him. Are they, just kind of,
Mhm.
sweeping him to the left or the right? Are they throwing it over? Are they going to try to run, different fakes and that kind of stuff? So, and the other thing is it's tough because you're not going to run, your specialty plays in the preseason. So I'm really curious to see what are these plays and what are they going to look like for Vegas on Saturday.
And really, we've seen him, on sweeps, and
Yeah.
we haven't seen him like he's maybe had a couple of carries as a running back in the past, but it's mostly been like the sweeps and things like that. He has more carries than he has catches in his NFL career, which I guess says more about his abilities at the wide receiver spot. But
Right. Yeah.
my take on this whole thing, and I've been feeling this, I've been saying this over the last year, like I think they want this guy on the roster for the kick return
Yeah.
rule.
I definitely wanted to work.
I think they want him on the roster. And I almost think that testing him out at running back seems to only strengthen that in my mind. Like you're trying to find any way to get this guy uh, involved in the offense. Obviously, teams keep guys who are solely return men all the time. That happens every year. There's plenty of
Right.
guys out there who only do one job, and that's return. And so, yes, if they want to keep him as the kick returner, they can find a way to do that. But you're always gonna tinker with it and try to find some way to get him involved in the offense. And look, if he can't run the routes you want him to run, if he can't catch the ball how you want him to catch it, just put the ball, stick it in his gut, and have him run. And sure, maybe he's only going to be the fourth running back on the depth chart, if that. You're going to keep Homer for special teams, so I don't know how much he's actually going to get any touches. But at this point, you don't really have anything to lose. You might as well try.
No, and I think this kind of goes into an interesting, kind of sticking with Vegas, but kind of talking about what we saw last week in the Hall of Fame game. But, fans finally got a chance to see, what the kickoff looks like. And obviously they really focused on it with the Fox broadcast and all the differences. And I forget whether it was a Bears coach or who said this, but it does seem like the kickoff kind of seems like a running play, doesn't it? Like it's kind of like, it's definitely less of a kickoff. So, and I forget who mentioned this, whether it was a coach or someone else, but some people have been talking about, do you put a Herbert back there? Do you put like a running back there? Since it's essentially a running play, just that you have to catch the ball as opposed to have it handed off. So I am curious to see, did the Bears kind of realize that in their practices and in that Hall of Fame game? And then they're like, well, maybe we put Herbert back there. Maybe we put someone else back there for kickoffs, and then we can transfer over Velas, to the running back room. Herbert obviously is still going to be a key cog for you as a running back, but I think this whole kickoff thing and how it changes things up really moves things around and can really, change up and kind of determine whether Velas is going to be part of this team or not.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because Herbert has experience doing kick returns. He did it in college. He did it his rookie year before he took on a bigger role at the running back position. He was doing kickoffs early that season. And yeah, like if they do view this as more of as like that body type could be really, they Richard Hightower, the special teams coordinator, is talking a lot about body types, and he means that not even necessarily for the return man, but trying to figure out which body types do well in this formation. Where you put your big guys, where you put your fast guys, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, maybe you do want a little bit more physical of a dude. Maybe you want a Khalil Herbert who we know can hit a hole. Like he led the NFL in yards per carry a couple of years ago. Like if he has space, he can make something happen. And so maybe that's a route that they could go. Herbert has been back there. It's been Velus Jones and Khalil Herbert back there, that first group. And
Right.
they basically depending on where the kicker kicks the ball is kind of how they're deciding who takes it back. I also think that second, because you can have two guys in the landing zone. I think even if you have one guy as your quote unquote return man, who you would ideally have the ball in his hands, that second guy back there has a really important job, because you don't want to miss that block, because you're essentially at a disadvantage numbers wise. And so you want a guy who's not going to whiff. Otherwise, you're going to be putting yourself in a really tough situation. You're going to be backed up a little bit. Maybe that's another argument for Khalil Herbert, because he can block well. I know he gets picked on a little bit in pass protection, but I think he can block well in a special team setting. Is a little bit different than when you got a defensive end running at you. But I do think that Velus is going to be valuable in that kick return game. Another note too is that Rome Odunze has been getting a lot of looks at punt return. I don't know if that's going to be the way they go. We'll have to see. DeAndre Carter is obviously still here, still around. He's a guy they signed specifically to do returns. I've seen Carter doing a lot more punts. He does punts and kicks, but certainly he seems like he's more in line to potentially win that punt return job than the kick return job. Michael, do you want to see Rome Odunze return some punts in this preseason?
I mean, I'm very hesitant to say yes, mostly just because of the risk of injury. Like, I think you have enough guys back there who can do the job pretty well. I know Rome's athletic. He's really great. Is he Devin Hester? Maybe, probably not. Like, when it comes to that, but I think it's just it's an opportunity cost. Like, is it worth risking the injury to have him back in the punt, and then you don't have your top wide receiver just to maybe receive a punt that he takes for a couple of yards and God forbid does something to his leg or something like that. So I think you have enough guys where sure, like Rome's got the talent, but he's done it in college, but he hasn't done it that much where it's kind of like, well, you got to bring back this guy. He's shown that he can do it in college. He did it a couple of times in college. He was fine with it. Obviously, he's athletic. He's really crafty and that kind of stuff. But I think you have enough guys back there where just, use Carter, use other guys, and leave Rome to like just being a wide receiver and offensive threat. I don't think this isn't high school. This isn't college where you need to put all your best players at every single position that you get. I think there are plenty of good, punt return guys who can make a difference, and you can keep, Rome as safe as possible and keep them on the offensive side of things.
Rome returned 3 punts in college, and one of them was an 80-plus yard touchdown. And so, who says he's not Devin Hester? I don't know. Yeah. That's pretty good percentage. But obviously they only used him 3 times, so that maybe also says something. Right. I generally agree with you. I don't know if you want your top 10 pick doing that, putting himself at the risk of injury there. I would throw him back there, see how he does a couple of times maybe. And if you're catching lightning in a bottle, stick with it, I suppose. But yeah, like if you're picking up, 9 yards of return, like it's not even worth the risk. So certainly something to keep an eye on. I think we will probably see him in one of these preseason games do that, but I don't know that for sure. And then, we can flip over to the other side of the football for a little bit here. Like I said, they're pretty banged up defensively. We're going to see kind of a mix and match secondary. I think Kevin Byard and Jalen Johnson will be out there as long as the starters are, which might not be long. What are you looking for, Michael, on the defensive side? I'm going to throw out a couple of names. I'm going to throw out Austin Booker. I'm going to throw out Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens. I'm personally watching that defensive line a lot more than I'm watching the secondary. What are you looking for on the defensive side?
Yeah, those are exactly the guys I was going to talk about. I think, I know Dexter, what did he have? Like he kind of came out a couple plays or something like that on Thursday, and then he came back in. He seemed fine. So hopefully he plays on Saturday.
He was kind of looking at his knee, which is always concerning, but he did return to the field. So I don't know. Well, that's definitely something to monitor because he's been having a great training camp.
Well, I feel like we want to see what he's able to do. And I think, getting those guys in there, especially without Sweat, I think that gives a lot of guys an opportunity, gives Walker an opportunity It gives Billings an opportunity, obviously, up the middle and that kind of stuff. But I thought, how much can you really take from the Hall of Fame game? Obviously, you can learn
Yeah.
something. But I think Booker looked pretty good, in the opportunities that he did have. Obviously, I know it wasn't, Houston's starting offensive line, but, he looked like he could create good pressure. He seemed like he was able to create some good moves to kind of, get around his blocker and that kind of stuff. So I want to see more of that. I want to see, can he continue to do that? Can he become a threat? Can he become someone who's going to be a thing this year, like as opposed to just being like a project, developmental guy? Can he contend with Walker to be on the other side, the other side of the defensive line? Because at this point, it seems like and I know obviously cuts can happen, and there's still some time here in training camp, but it seems like Ryan Poles is going to go with his young guys, and he wants to see what he's going to develop here. So, whether that means Ngakoue comes back, I don't know. Maybe not. He obviously has, seen other, teams tried out for other teams. He hasn't been signed yet, I don't think, unless I'm missing something. But it seems like Poles and Eberflus are really comfortable with just going with their guys, and that's kind of something that you have to do here. You can't just, sign everyone. You can't just, sign guys or trade for guys. Eventually, you need to develop some guys too. So Dexter and Booker are great candidates for that, and I think this is going to be a really big game to see. This isn't going to make or break them, but I think this will show you, especially since you can't really work on this too much in training camp. Watch them go against guys they're not used to going against. Watch Booker try to get around and pressure the quarterback. Watch Dexter, try to run, stop the run and figure out how he's going to cause some havoc up the middle. He looks great. He looks the part, but now I want to see him kind of do it in live game action. So those two guys specifically, they've got a lot of young talent there, and I'm really curious to see, are they able to do that against the Bills starting offensive line, which, has been fairly good for the past, 5 years at this point?
Yeah. I think a lot of us have been assuming that Austin Booker is kind of going to be that developmental guy at the edge, at the very bottom of the depth chart, who maybe is inactive on Sundays and, isn't playing a whole lot. And I think if you're Ryan Poles, if you're still thinking about signing a defensive end, if that's a thought on your mind, it doesn't hurt to just see what you got in this guy and let this play out. If you're going to wait, last year, I think they signed Yannick on August, right around now, like 8th, 9th, 10th, something like that. If you're going to wait that long, why not just watch a couple of preseason games, see what you really have in Austin Booker? Because maybe the guy will surprise you. They obviously have, they really like him. They obviously have high hopes for him in the future. He's a little bit leaner. They probably want to put more weight on him. He was talking the other day about that's more of a long-term goal. You can't really do that in the summer when you're burning 2,000 calories every practice. That's probably going to be something they focus on in January, February, March next year. But yeah, why not see what you have in this guy before you go out there and hit the free agent market? You might even be able to find, if it doesn't work out, you'll probably be able to find somebody who gets cut on some other team, put in a waiver claim. I think that might be the way this is trending. We'll have to see. DeMarcus Walker's been really fired up in practice. I don't think that surprises anybody based on his personality. I had a lot of people in my mentions saying, well, okay, it's time to get more than 3 sacks. And yeah, I hear you guys. Like that's fair. Let's see. There was a comment in here from Rick. He was asking about Zach Pickens. Is he a lost cause or what? He needs to do something. Definitely not a lost cause. He didn't get a ton of playing time last season. With Justin Jones gone and Javon moves up the depth chart, that's going to move up Zach. I was talking to Travis Smith, the defensive line coach, about Zach. And one of the things Zach had said was like his biggest struggles were just, and it's going to sound simplistic, but just identifying run versus pass. And when I asked Travis about that, he said, that's kind of on me. That's on the coaching staff. Like I need to get these guys so they're not thinking so much out there. And I think that was maybe part of the problem Zach was having, just that transition from the college level to the NFL. If you're thinking too much out there, if you're trying to identify run versus pass, and you're even a little bit slow at that, that's going to really hurt your ability to affect the game. I think this could be a case where he is a really. I really do think we might see him make some more plays coming off that second line for the defensive line. He's going to be behind Billings and Jervon, but he probably will be in the starting lineup on Saturday with Billings being out this week or the past couple of weeks. I think Zach is a guy that I would definitely not give up on yet.
And I think he'll probably get a lot of experience on Saturday, right? Like he'll get a good chunk. Obviously, I know he's a starter, and Eberflus said that starters won't play for that long, but in reality, he's probably your, like you mentioned, your second team guy. So I think Saturday is going to be a great opportunity for him to kind of take that next step. It's just reps for these guys, right? It's just trying to figure out what you can do, what you can't do, especially for the line guys. You can barely I know that they're tackling. I know they got pads on now, but honestly, like how much are they really getting after it when it comes to training camp? Like I've heard so many players say that the game reps and those scrimmages that obviously happen between teams, that's where you really learn a lot about yourself. So I think that would be a good opportunity for him. I know I've seen some guys mention Martin and that kind of stuff. And I know obviously he's had some injuries here and there, but he'll be someone, once he kind of gets back into the swing of things, with some injuries and that kind of stuff, that'll be somewhat an option too, just to kind of look at what he's able to do, what he's able to contribute there, because he had a pretty good start to, training camp. Obviously, the beginning of training camp, like we've talked about before, you're not really getting after it. You're still kind of getting into the swing of things, but he did look good at the beginning of training camp. So that can be another option to kind of help you with your depth there.
Yeah, Jacob Martin is at least on the official depth chart. He's pretty high up there. He's on the second line.
Sure.
He got hurt first or second day of pads. He was one of the first guys to get hurt. Unfortunately, it looked like maybe the foot or the ankle, something like that. We don't really know. And he hasn't been back out there since. So yeah, I don't think we're going to see him yet. Hopefully that's something that isn't going to put him out too long, because he's a guy that you want to see in the preseason, I feel like, or at least he's a little bit of an unknown for Bears fans. I know he's not a rookie or anything like that, but I think all this injury talk segues well into the Hard Knocks. I think when Michael, you and I haven't had a chance to talk about what we saw from Hard Knocks. I thought it was funny that they had the trainer up there saying exactly how long Theo Benedet's going to be out, when they don't really like to tell us that in real life.
Yeah, that was your real life injury update, because you weren't getting that from Matt Eberflus in the press conference, right? But that was probably like the best, not the injury itself.
No, but the
Theo probably was the star of that first episode, wasn't he?
Yes.
Just like the being able to.
That was the feel good moment for sure.
Yeah, and that was kind of what Hard Knocks does, right? They kind of reel you in to get you all like, you're like, oh, I love this guy. This guy's so cool.
Yeah.
Like he's got a good personality. He's trying to make the team. And then it's like he got injured, and now we don't know if he's going to be back for training camp. So that was probably the best part of the whole episode. Obviously, you can check out our takeaways from the first episode.
ShawLocal.com.
It did. I don't know how you felt. It felt like kind of like a setup episode. It kind of felt like, for non-Bears fans, it felt like, here are all these guys. Here's the number one draft pick. Here's Matt Eberflus. He's been here for so many years. He has a new look now. This is why it matters. It felt like a setup episode. A lot of good stuff for Eberflus. A lot of good stuff from Caleb Williams. I think the biggest substance came in actually from the conversation with Nick Saban. That was
my favorite part. Yeah,
that was like the top takeaway I had when I was putting together our review. Just it's very clear that Matt Eberflus values his relationship with Nick Saban, and I obviously don't know. I don't know how often they're talking to each other. If that's the only time they really talked for a while, but I think that was good insight from someone who's been there, at the college level, has watched these kids develop, has watched these guys kind of come up. I know, a lot of people will say, well, how many Alabama quarterbacks have really worked out? But he knows what to do, and he knows what to kind of put guys in these primetime positions. And I thought his insight on Caleb was cool, and I thought it was cool how Hard Knocks kind of put together. You got Saban saying you got to watch him from behind and ask him what he saw. You saw them doing that in the next clip, and you watched him show him instead of telling him, and they do that in the next clip. So I thought that was probably the best part of the whole thing. Just watching, Saban kind of give Eberflus this advice and then the Bears putting it into practice.
Yeah, I thought much of the show was well edited, and that's a really good example of it. Like you heard what they were talking about, then you saw it in action. That was really well done. Yeah, the Caleb Williams Michael Jordan intro was pretty fun. I think I don't know how you can be from Chicago and not get fired up watching that. That was pretty cool.
I will be a little curmudgeon though, and I will say I had a problem with that because you're taking the greatest basketball player of all time and you're comparing it to a guy who hasn't taken an NFL snap like once. Like I get it. Like the hype is there. You want him to be the next Jordan. You want him to have the same meaning to what Jordan meant to Chicago for 2 decades. But maybe let's chill a little bit here. Let's chill with the comparisons to Michael Jordan. Like if this is Patrick Mahomes, okay, fine. Let's start that conversation if you're a Chiefs camp and you're doing it there. But man, I feel like let's take it easy there. Obviously, I know it was right there. It was cool to get the intro. It was cool to get that going, but let's take it easy there. Let's have a good rookie season before we start making the comparisons to Michael Jordan.
Rick is booing you in the comments while CJ is saying thank you, Michael. So you've really found there's a divide there, I think, among people. And yeah, like I see what you're saying. Caleb hasn't even played in a game yet. Let's pump the brakes on that. But I think it's also fair to be excited if you're a Bears fan.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And look, if he is a bust, I don't want to put that out there, but if he is a bust, now's the time to use that music, and then you probably won't see that again. What did you feel? How did you feel about the airtime for Flus and his family? I think Matt Eberflus has a lot to gain from being on Hard Knocks. I think this is going to be a lot of good PR for him and his coaching trajectory. Honestly, like I think it's good for people to see some of that behind the scenes stuff. I think it's good, to see his family and to see. I'd love to see more of his house. That place looks sick. But I think this is going to be a really good thing for Flus.
I think so too. And I think you're kind of getting his personality where, for the first 2 years, it was bad. Like I feel like Matt really took it, from fans. For the first couple of years, he took it from the media. Mm-hmm. Things were always tense at press conferences.
They were losing a lot too.
Like obviously the losing, the biggest part of it, but it just seemed like it just wasn't working. And then, he does the whole, I know he talked about it, media training, trying to figure out how to relate more. He's got, these quirks more, and he's saying, go USA. And he's like kind of, chatting with the reporters instead of kind of I don't know if this is necessarily how he viewed them, but it felt like it was viewed as a tense relationship between the media and him. And now it's kind of like, all right, like we can be cordial with each other. We can, have some back and forth. We can make some jokes here and there. It doesn't have to be so tense. And I think that's helped him. And I think this episode and Hard Knocks is going to help him, where you kind of see, the comparisons of, make Matt Eberflus look like Ryan Reynolds and, do this, change of, face and that kind of stuff. So I think it's been great for him so far. Obviously, at the end of the day, you need to win football games. That's really what makes a head coach, become Mike Ditka, because if, Ditka wasn't winning, his antics would have gotten really tiresome really quickly. Right. So I think it's great for him, but I think it's also, once you start winning games, I think people will be much more into it and, really happy about the nice house, the hairdo and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it comes down to winning football games. And, one of the things that sticks out with me when I think back to their decision to keep Eberflus was that Ryan Poles back in January said, something to the effect of, well, if you guys saw what I see behind the scenes and, his work ethic and the way he approaches the job, you'd understand why I never even thought of moving off of him. And it's like, well, yeah, let's see it, and so this is our opportunity to see that. Obviously, we're not going to see him, we're not going to see him like watching film, evaluating players. They're going to cut that kind of stuff out, but we at least get a little bit. We get a little bit of that stuff. Not to backtrack, but I did think when Saban brought up Peyton Manning throwing 28 interceptions his first year, my first thought was, well, yeah, he had a coach who was in his first year and wasn't going to get canned. And so I'm like, if Caleb comes out here and throws 20 interceptions, I don't know if Matt Eberflus has the runway to keep developing this guy. But maybe that's probably a whole nother conversation. That's kind of what we were talking about in January when all this went down.
Yeah, I think it's a different situation. Obviously, we've talked about. I don't think Peyton Manning had a DJ Moore, or Keenan Allen, or Rome Odunze. Obviously, Caleb obviously has much more. But I understand the point he was trying to make, and I think it kind of boils back to expectations. I feel like I've seen this a lot on Twitter. I've seen it in our comments. I've seen it all over the place. Where I get it. Bears fans are excited. They're really excited for Caleb Williams. They want him to be the quarterback. They want him to be the franchise quarterback that they've waited for so long. And I think Bears fans need to realize that this is going to be a rookie quarterback. He could, as a warning, he could go 0 for 3 on Saturday and he could look bad. That is a very realistic possibility. I mean, for all the, the nice passes that you see on Hard Knocks, for all the nice clips you see on Twitter, it hasn't looked good so far, right? Obviously, I know that the defense has been winning training camp. So I think Bears fans need to realize that this rookie season is not going to be easy. It's not going to look great all the time. And it goes back to what Saban is trying to get to, where it's kind of like you need to manage expectations. You need to manage what Caleb is going to do, because it's not going to look pretty. It could not look like what CJ Stroud did like last year. It could look bad. It could look half a game he looks great, half a game he looks like, what is he doing? Why is he throwing into double coverage? Why is he, attempting that pass when he should just run away? It's not going to be easy. And I think that's the biggest thing the Bears fans need to prepare themselves for. And I think that's kind of why I'm sure the Bears were kind of like, yeah, include this. Like if Nick Saban is saying this, I'm sure a lot of Bears fans might be like, oh, okay, maybe it's fine that he's struggling, as opposed to, Matt Eberflus or Poles saying that. So I think that's a good lesson for everybody, not just for Matt Eberflus, for Bears fans, just to kind of temper your expectations. It's preseason. The notes, I'm sure, from a lot of reporters, I see a lot of Bears fans being like, this is the end. Justin Fields is doing great. I'm sure there'll be a lot of Bears fans watching Justin Fields tonight when the Steelers play. And they could potentially watch Justin Fields be great and then Caleb Williams not be great the next day. Manage those expectations, because it's not going to look all great. You just got to watch that progress. You got to watch him become an NFL quarterback. And hopefully once we get into October, hopefully November, you're seeing him progress into what can be a franchise quarterback.
So let's all watch this preseason game on Saturday against the Bills with a little grain of salt. And yeah, you're right, Michael. Like, the Bears have final editing say on this Hard Knocks series. So I think that's a really good point. Like, they wouldn't have put that quarterback stuff with Saban in there if they didn't see a value in that. And yeah, maybe it is pumping the brakes on things a little bit. Enjoy the game, everybody. But let's try not to overreact one way or the other. We're running out of time. We got to get out of here. Thank you guys all for joining us this morning. If you joined us live, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, keep an eye out for our Twitter pages. We'll put out when we're going live. You can join us here on YouTube. I'm at Sean_Hammond on Twitter. He's Dwojak94. You can follow Bears_Insider for all of our coverage. Do us a favor and head to shawlocal.com. Read our stuff. Consider subscribing. That's the best way to support our work. This has been the Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. I'm Sean Hammond. He's Michael Dwojak. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and enjoy the game this weekend.